This episode is brought to you by Goals.com, the sales performance platform built to help teams stay focused, motivated, and on track. While most CRMs just track data, Goals.com drives real results. It's simple, affordable, and designed to help your sales team hit targets faster, without the headache of complex setup or costly consultants. Whether you're using a CRM or not, Goals.com works seamlessly to elevate your performance. Book a fun, fast demo today at Goals.com.
All right, welcome back to the Goals.com podcast, where we dive into the mindset, strategies, and tools that drive top sales performance. Today, I'm joined by John Mathews, the Vice President of Sales at Buxton, a company that's transforming how organizations grow by putting customer insights at the center of decision-making. John leads the go-to-market sales organization across a wide range of industries, from healthcare and retail to entertainment and e-commerce. We're going to talk about sales leadership, performance culture, and how data can be a game changer for growth. John, thanks for being here. Excited to have this conversation with you.
Andrew, pleasure. I'm excited to be here today.
All right, let's just dive right in. Sales leadership and strategy. What are the most important characteristics you look for when hiring or developing sales leaders within your organization?
Well, I love that. And have a few today, right? And obviously throughout my career, I've grown from, first line level leadership to second line level leadership. And there's obviously different characteristics, of course, you look for in an individual contributor versus a sales manager, sales director. And I think for the biggest, few bigger pieces for me is one is just, I think self-awareness, right? Over swagger. I take a self-aware leader over a sales hero any day, right? I think it's important for individuals to understand what are your strengths as a leader, right? What are you not so great at? Because leadership is about multiplying others. It's not about maximizing yourself. So of course, I want individuals that recognize and have a high aptitude of self-awareness, because it's important to understand, okay, where am I really strong in? And what does my leadership team look like today that make up for some of my weaknesses, right? And that's very important. And I think a lot of great leaders do that. And I think the leaders that maybe aren't as great, you kind of see them trying to take on everything at once. But in reality, we're not strong at everything. And Andrew, I'd be the first leader to tell you, hey, I'm not great at everything, right? I depend on some of my sales managers to come to me and tell me the state of the business, help me understand some things. And furthermore, even along the people side of everything. And so self-awareness is very important attribute for that piece. And I think the second one is more of a coaching mentality. That is very important. When you're a first line level leader and arguably second line level leader, right? Let's make this clear. Leadership is about development of others. So my job is not done at the second line, at a third line, right? My job is then to develop the people underneath me, right? But as a first line level leader, coaching mentality is a necessity to be successful. I look for people who light up when talking about developing others. If they're not invested into their success of their team, you're chasing quota with a title. You have to be able to take the time to develop your people. And I think a lot of mistakes that organizations make, Andrew, is, and I know you've probably heard this one before and you've gotten it from several others, is, well, this individual is a top producer. Why would we not promote them into leadership? And again, I'm going to be clear, and I know individuals have heard this all around, but the best producers don't necessarily make the best leaders, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's extremely important to understand the balance between that. And so I think for me, the second piece is a coaching mentality. And I think the third one could be a variety of few factors, but what pops into my mind is strategic pattern recognition, right? Can they connect the dots across deals, markets, and people? Best leaders operate with a dual lens. Today's execution is tomorrow's scaling playbook. And so individuals that need to be able to come in to identify and understand things. Hey, we're what are our strengths as a sales organization? What do we need to work on in a sales organization? Where do we win? Where do we not win? Who are the people that we have in place today? Are they the right people? Especially with our go-to-market strategy that is aligned with everything that we have in place. And so when I look at leaders and hiring leaders and developing leaders, there are set characteristics I look at to make sure I'm bringing in the right people to help support myself and the entire organization as well, too.
Like it. So, what's your approach to keeping a sales team focused on high impact activities without getting lost in all the noise out there?
Oh, there's a lot of noise today, Andrew, right? And it's funny. I was just telling someone this the other day. I said, back in 2009 when I was selling, I think we, obviously it's not I'm not dating myself too far here, but we had a laptop and a phone, right? And then I believe I had a massive book of contact names to reach out to, right? LinkedIn was around, wasn't popular just yet, right? And so those were your two systems. I think let's fast forward in today's society. I almost sometimes feel bad for individuals and managers because there's so much out there now. And I think for me, at the end of the day, there's a few set amount of tools that can make any company successful. You don't need to keep reintroducing tools. Oh, we need more. We need more. In reality, that overcomplexes individuals, right? That actually slows them down when you have too many tools. So I think it's important to understand that every company is a bit different in terms of what you need. And there's a whole bunch of tools out there. But for me, activity has always been one of those fun ones, especially over the course of the last few years. There's a lot of leaders out there that believe, hey, you know, activity is just a result of the end goal, which is for sales purposes, achieving quota in that piece. But reverse engineering, how do we get there? Here's how many X amount of dials you need to make, X amount of emails, X amount of demos that you need to get booked, and so forth. And so, but for me, is more important than complexity, right? I preach the rule of three, which is what are the three most important activities each reps should do daily to win. If that doesn't tie back to pipeline or revenue health, it's noise. And so for me, time blocking and system thinking, great sales team don't just hustle, they prioritize discipline. We protect prospecting time like it's a meeting with the CEO and so forth. And so I think one trait that a lot of people forget is just time management. And especially when you see the world of remote work, which I'm a big proponent on, right? I do believe there is an argument, and I think maybe, Andrew, this is another side combo we can take one day of being in person versus remote. I think have their benefits. And I think even a remote culture should be meeting in person at least once a quarter. Because I do, again, think there's a lot of benefits to that. But, the important piece right now is how do you manage your time wisely? Each and every single day, you should be blocking out time, whether it's taking your current meetings that you have in place, leaving time aside to prospect, even leaving time aside to be strategic and just take a step back and look at your pipe and go, okay, you know what are my next steps on each of these? How do I get these across the finish line? Which of these opportunities have legs better than the other ones, right? Which ones are looking to close sooner than the others? And I don't think we take enough time to do a lot of those things. And so for me, it's really important to think about the activities that really impact your revenue, right? Your performance. And so in doing that, you just want to make sure that, you have everything, the right tools in place. You don't need 20 different tools out there, right? You just need
Right.
a few set of tools that will help you be successful. And the rest, I think, is on the individuals to manage their time wisely and to make sure that, they're driving towards their success in each and every single activity that they do.
Yeah. So, kind of related to that, what KPIs do you prioritize when measuring sales performance at Buxton?
Yeah, for me, I think it's important for obviously net new meetings getting booked, right? We have I have a BDR manager and a team. Obviously we have a sales team on a few different fronts, right? But for me, it's like, sales, we can't just wait for inbound. To me, I always say inbound is a gift. BDRs are an awesome support system, but also let alone a great farming system for you to promote individuals within. But at the same time, as a seller, you're starting to really see that full cycle seller come back in place. And I think you would agree, Andrew. We went through a period of time where we got inbounds coming in. Let's just handle this and go, right? But at the end of the day, too, you can't ensure the success from just inbound, right? And so when looking at that, I look at net new meetings created. How many net new meetings did you create this month? Did that add to the top of the funnel build for you, right? Were they qualified meetings? Were they really strategic meetings and so forth? And so I look at that piece. I think when you look at maybe a back-to-back performance month where you didn't have that much success as a seller setting up net new meetings, then you have to really start diving into the activity of saying, okay, well, it looks like here, Andrew, we're not making enough calls, or we're not getting enough emails out, or we're not multi-threading enough to other individuals, right? You're going after this company ABC, but you're only reaching out to one individual. So for me, I know one of the most important KPIs is I look at is just net new meetings created, because that also means that we're building to the top. We're building to the funnel, right? And then I think another piece for me is just conversion rates throughout the pipeline. Um, I look at that a lot, and I have done that a lot in the last few years, because for me too, it's every seller is going to be different. Some sellers are great at opening. Some sellers are great at closing. You do have sellers out there that are just well-rounded, right? But typically, a lot of individuals will kind of sway towards more of the, being stronger in the beginning of the pipe, or being stronger later on in the funnel, right? Where you're looking to close. And so for me is, what are the conversion rates between each of your stages? And how successful are you? Is there a pattern happening, right? Are you losing more in those middle stages?
Right.
Is that because you don't have next steps in place? Is that because maybe you're not articulating the value enough, or even diving into the other solutions that prospect might be evaluating and so forth too? Or is it, hey, we're getting to the finish line here, we're just not getting these across? So is it a full understanding of a prospect's budget? Do you understand the price point that we gave them? Did the value that you've articulated this entire time line up with what the prospect was looking to achieve in their future state and so forth? And so those are some of the metrics that I look at to ensuring moving forward and revenue build success.
I love that. So how do you create a performance culture that motivates without burning people out?
Again, I think I go back to some of the statements I previously mentioned, right? Was we're in a completely different society. I think when you and I started our careers, it was more of that boilerplate type
Yep.
atmosphere of, hey,
Definitely.
it's smile and dial. I think I've heard that a lot when I first started my career, and so forth, right? But over time, I think we all as leaders recognize too, what was that the smartest piece, right? Was it truly about activity count, or was it about quality? Now, some days you may be able to, some days you might be able to make more calls than other days. Some days you might be able to get out more emails than others, right? And so I think for me, it's really about like, when you prioritize sales performance at Buxton, I really just try to motivate the team at the end goal of saying, look, this is our vision. This is our direction, and this is where we're going. And as a leader, that's always important for me to kind of revisit that vision, because you're right, Andrew. I think a lot of times, though, too, when you get into some of these quarters, not every quarter is going to be successful. You're going to have
Right.
down quarters, and you don't want to ruin that momentum. Or, coming off a bad quarter, your team can kind of be a little bit low, right? And so you want to ensure that you're continuing to paint the vision and the direction and the picture of where we're going. I think just kind of going down more and less. Some of the key things I look at outside of just keeping the team motivated is, obviously win rate by segment or persona, because quality is greater than quantity, right? We kind of talked about it earlier, Andrew. We hit on it, but stage to stage conversion rates. This is how you diagnose your pitch, your value prop, or is your targeting, is it broken? Is it working right? And then obviously the pipeline coverage. Those are some of the more specific things I look at when measuring, sales performance from a KPI standpoint, but let alone you want to continue to really motivate the team. And I think that just kind of takes a leader who understands both sides of the business. One, understanding what your team goes through day to day. I still jump on calls when I can. In fact, I kind of made a promise to myself as I rose through the ranks, and as I continued to try to rise the ranks in my career in the future. I've always made a promise I never want to stop being on sales calls, because
Mm-hmm.
it's very important, as a trait that you can, I wouldn't say lose, but it's a trait that I see some senior leaders forget often, of being in the shoes of a seller, or being in the shoes of her first line level leader, right? I don't want to forget those things, because I do understand data does paint us an awesome picture, especially with the data that we can collect today as leaders. However, behind data, there's always a story. And that's where you need to seek to understand as a leader, right? And I think that's where my empathy comes in often at times. And if I see a seller that's been my top seller, but then maybe has a bad quarter, I'm not looking at that person saying, "Hey, what's going on?" I'm seeking to understand because things like that are going to happen. And so I think it's accumulation of things of just making sure you set expectations with your team, set and paint the vision in the company direction and where you want to go, right? And just bring the energy. As a leader, you have to bring the energy for people. Even in the down times, you have to keep an even level playing field for yourself, and you have to portray that with your team, And so I think those are just some things I could try to kind of stick by and implement myself as a leader.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. How do you use data to coach underperforming reps back to quota?
Yeah, it actually that's I love that piece because I think for me it's like again, we were kind of just talking about data, Andrew, where data now compared to even 5 years ago. I mean, I'm kind of like, man, where was this back in 2012 for me, right? But also too, it's one of those things I had to kind of groom into data because I started my leadership career out at a very young age, right, within my second organization. So for me, I was like, well, wait a minute. I have the pulse of my people. I don't need data. But then as time goes on, you're like, wait a minute. Data is our North Star, right? But how we get there obviously involves a human element side of leaders and what we do. And so I think, just precision coaching. I never ask a struggling rep just to do more, right? To me, if I'm being honest, that's just lazy. That's lazy leadership. Instead, I ask, hey, where exactly is the funnel breaking? Is it bad fit accounts? Is it wrong messaging? Is it not multi-threading? I know we kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier too, but that's another good piece. And then you use data to find the blockers, right? Then you coach the skill. So data shows the pattern, coaching fixes the behavior, right? And so it's like offering a prescription, to a seller that they need at that time. But without the data, I think old school days, we were just kind of like, hey, you know what? Let's work on this first. Versus now we can get more prescriptive and more honed in on individuals who are underperforming and really help that piece, right? Because for me, Andrew, if you hire that individual, that means one, you believed in them from the beginning. Two, if they have all the right attributes of your company and your core values and they work hard, I think sometimes leaders let people go too soon, right? Obviously, you have to see progress points, right? There comes a point in time where, hey, maybe things just aren't clicking, and that's sometimes that happens, and those people end up going to a different organization and they are successful. So it's not really um, it's not really something against the leader or the seller at times, but data does help us get, as I mentioned again, it helps us get more prescriptive, and it really helps give our sellers better coaching points as well too.
I agree. I've seen too many times when people get let go a little too early because they were undercoached and undergroomed.
Agreed. And honestly, Andrew, sometimes that comes from these, and I think you would agree, the hyper growth startup world has been appealing to a lot of younger individuals because I think there's a path for people to move up quicker, right? Whether you want to be more of a senior seller, whether you want to go into leadership, I think some of these, again, hyper growth companies that are scaling quickly, venture backed, right? I think that's appealing for people. But in those type of cultures too, I think we tend to let people go a little bit sooner because we're getting crunched with, hey, we got to hit these numbers, we got to do this, and so funny because in my career, I've had some individuals that were underperforming in the first, call it 4.5 months, and you have a founder or C-level going, hey, is it time to let this person go? And I'm like, no, well, hold on. Wait a minute. Look, here's the trend. They're obviously moving in an upward trajectory, right? But some people do take longer. An example, I had an individual struggling for about 5.5 months, and I was getting a lot of pressure to remove this individual. And this was earlier on I wouldn't say too early on, but enough time to where data was getting involved and
Mhm.
you could make good decisions. But I believed in this person. I saw this individual work hard to try to perform, right? They were taking in feedback. They love to be coached, right? They caught on to things. When you were coaching too, you have to understand too, is is your seller or even sales manager applying those things? And that person they ended up being the top producer by the end of the year, right? And it just goes to show sometimes I do feel we let people go a little too soon, but then sometimes, Andrew, and again, maybe this is a different combo, is I sometimes think we hold on to people too long.
Definitely.
And there's a balance, and that's hard, right? That's sometimes a very difficult path, even for someone who's been leading teams for, 12 and a half out of 15 years of my career. There's times though too, you have to make a decision, you have to make a choice, and you just, you hope you're using data and obviously your experience to make the right ones.
Yeah, mixing data with gut, right?
Yes, 100%. You know what I call it? I said mixing data with experience. And I think, that's always the best piece too. And it's just sometimes, like you said, you got to go with your gut. And again, back that piece up though too. If you make a decision, support your own decision and move forward.
So, what advice do you have for sales leaders who want to leverage data better but don't really know where to start?
Yeah, and that's a really great question. I think for me, it's like younger leaders, and I was having some good conversations over the last few months of younger leaders, and getting asked a lot about, hey, are we promoting people too soon? Do they have the experience? I believe when someone's ready, regardless of tenure or age, promote them, especially if they fit within the culture and so forth too. But again, when hiring younger individuals or first time level leaders, you have to be prepared to coach them. Plain and simple. And if you don't have that time, then that's probably not the right ideal person you want to bring on, right? For me, so if I'm a young leader and I'm looking to try and understand how to leverage data a little better, start small. You don't want to inundate yourself with 30 different reports. You're going to get overwhelmed, right? And then you also have your rev ops, you have leadership feeding you data. Hey, look at this, look at that. 3 years, 4 years into my career as a leader, I said to myself, I gotta have a better process of looking at data, right? But that means time management. I need to kind of properly set time in place in my weeks, not only for my people, but for me to take a step back and look at the business from a data standpoint to say, okay, here's what we need to work on as a org. Oh, here's what that person needs to work on personally. And so I block out time daily, whether it's just 30 minutes every morning, and I take a look at some reports that I can, discuss here in a second about, what's most important today. But then Friday afternoons, I, you know, those tend to be a little bit slower in the week, right? And that's really my reporting operational time as well, too. I'll get deep into some data on that end. But I think first and foremost, as a young leader, is just understand the pipeline.
Mhm.
Understand your pipeline and where it's at today. I can't say this enough that pipeline at the end of the day is very important. You have to be building revenue. You have to be building top of funnel. You have to be winning, right? So understand your team's pipeline. Going back to kind of stage conversions, right? Understand, where is your team winning? Is that in a specific vertical? If you're a multi-product organization, which product are you selling more of, right? Should you double down in that piece? And so I think for me, it's, if you're going to kind of first time data and inundate yourself into it, is one, just start with the pipeline side of things, right? Start with that data, because I think that's going to help in terms of, what's your sales cycle time, right? What's your win rate? What industries, verticals are you winning the most in? And what are your value drivers with that piece, right? And so having that data first will certainly help. As you continue to kind of get grounded in that piece, then you expand yourself into more data. Then you get a little bit more granular with that side, but you don't want to overwhelm yourself. So again, just kind of keep focus on the pipeline side of things, and you drive it from there.
What trends in buyer behavior are most impacting how sales teams go to market today?
I'll tell you what, Andrew, I think a lot of leaders would say this to me. Selling in today's climate is very different than when you and I sold, 14, 15 years ago. You have a lot more competition in the space at
Mhm.
regardless of what you're selling, right? You have a lot more competition in the space, period. There's a lot more people starting their own startups because they're leaving the corporate world, because they're saying, hey, I can do this myself and I can do it better, right? Great. We want to encourage that, but at the same time, there's been a lot of things coming and going. I know you and I, our favorite, we've heard, hey, cold calling doesn't work anymore. Well, now that no one's cold calling as much, I feel like cold calling's picking back up, right?
Definitely.
Now, email, everyone loves the email, but guess what? One's emailing in those from that factor, right? So you have to think about, hey, if I'm reaching out to this person, there's probably 20 other people reaching out to this person potentially in the same day or without even in the given week. And so there's a lot of noise in today's outbounding time. I think the biggest thing for the age is the age of the educated buyer. Buyers show up 70% down the funnel. You know, your sales process needs to meet them there. Second piece is risk aversion is higher than ever. Um, Multi-threading isn't an option anymore. I call it survival. If you are not multi-threaded in an opportunity, I love when I get this. Oh, John, we got a hot op. It's ready to close here before the end of the quarter, right? And I say that because, you know, given we're almost at the end of Q2, but oh, fantastic. All right, who's the POC? Who are we in talks with? Well, they're just, they're a manager. So, they'd be a champion, but they said, hey, they have full autonomy here and so forth. Well, who else is involved? Well, no one, but they're going to talk to leadership. My point being here on this is you as a seller now have to get proactive. And I tell my team that all the time, right? Even if you're stuck with the champion and they let you know, hey, Andrew, these last two calls have been great. I think I have all the information I want. I'll let you know how next week goes when I talk to leadership. No, hold on there, right? Like to me, that's a major red flag. One, is your champion even armed enough to sell the value of who you are, especially from a pricing standpoint? I believe in a lot of champions can sell the value of your own product, especially if you've had a good relationship or some good calls with them. But are they able to articulate the ROI, from a CFO or from their superior in the C-suite, whatever the case is, whether you're selling IT, marketing, HR, doesn't matter. You have to be able to multi-thread and you have to be able to get in front of a lot of other people. And I think too, the number of stakeholders in deals keep climbing. So your messaging better land with finance and ops, not just a specific user, or someone saying, hey, Andrew, this would be great for me. I love it. What's the cost? Let me go present this, right? You're just wasting time there. CFOs have definitely been more involved. I don't see that going away anytime soon. I think given, where we kind of landed after COVID and the interest rates and I think a lot of companies just kind of hiring and buying, right? I don't think we're going to see the CFO or tight budgets go away anytime soon. I think companies want to run more efficient and they want to be obviously budget conscious and smart about that piece, right? And I think so too. So when that piece comes, just understand if you're only dealing with one person, regardless of the size of the company, even if you're an SMB and you're talking to the CEO, well, did you ask if that CEO reports into a board? Do they have any financial investors that would want to understand this too? Everyone reports into someone, right? So
Right.
at the end of the day, you just need to understand that and find that out, but get proactive. Reach out to them, right? Let your champion know, hey, I'm going to reach out to this person. Maybe all three or four of us can get on a call. That way, you and we can make sure that this gets across for you, right?
I like it. All right. We have to touch on AI. How do you see AI playing a role in the future of sales? To say
It's
the
a
least. Yeah.
It's already playing a role. I'm very fortunate for the company I'm at with today that we actually have an internal AI. I call him an AI guru, but we have an individual internally today that his sole responsibility is to support all of our go-to-market teams in terms of how we can leverage AI better for what we do. And I'm not talking about the gongs of the world. Great product. I'm not pitching them here, but I'm a personal fan of Gong that has a lot of AI capabilities. And there's a lot of tools out there that have that, right? Don't get me wrong, Gong's not the only one. However, ChatGPT, right? Other type of things, right? Breaking down calls. Again, you can do a lot of those things within a lot of tools, but sales is AI in sales. It is here. It is now. For me in sales, AI will accelerate reps. It's not going to replace them. I might be an odd duck here, Andrew, and a lot of people will say, no, John, you're wrong. AI is going to replace a lot of salespeople. No, I would say that's wrong. I think if we broke down sales components, if you look at a call center, sure, maybe AI replaces some of those individuals one day, right? Um, However, from sales B2B, I don't see that happening soon. There's still a human element side of things that you need to have. However, with AI, there's real-time call coaching, there's better forecasting, there's auto-generated follow-ups, right? That really help individuals kind of see things a little bit more clear. I mean, God, Andrew, if I had ChatGPT back in,
I
2010,
know.
15, hey, break down this call for me. Am I missing something? What are the red flags here, right? Or hey, ChatGPT, help me write up. I have to reach out to the CFO here, and I need to make a compelling case, but I can't have this email be too lengthy, right, and so forth. And so there's just so many positive proponents that we have within AI. But again, I want to be very clear. I do not see AI replacing reps. Location analytics, AI unlocks, predictive insights faster, helps reps choose the right markets and right targets. And so not just working hard, right? We can feed AI components of where we're winning, who are we winning with, right? Hey, diagnose this call. Why do you think or feel that I won in this area? And how can I replicate that, right, throughout my time as a seller? And so I don't want salespeople to think AI is just it's a crutch, or hey, I don't need it. I don't really understand it. I use it more as a Google search, right? Versus this. But if you just take some time and incorporate it into your day to day as a seller, it's not going to slow you down. In fact, it's going to speed you up. It's going to provide you with insights that you might have been missing, because you could be managing a 30 opportunity pipeline at the moment, or maybe you're more enterprise, right? And you're focused on 6 or 7 opportunities. But Andrew, you and I both know, when enterprise sellers, you need 1 or 2 deals a quarter. Otherwise, you're not hitting that yearly goal, right? AI can help with a lot of those factors. And so I'm pretty fortunate where we're at today. And even myself, I'll admit, as a leader, a few years back, I didn't really embrace it as much. But now that's something I'm working on too, is just embracing AI more as a leader.
All right, with mindset and growth stuff, what's the best sales advice you've ever received?
As a seller or as a leader?
How about both?
As a leader, one of my mentors once told me, and at a very young age, because I was very forthcoming, hey, sales is my passion. I want to be, I think, Andrew, call me an odd child. I think at 15, I was like, Mom, Dad, I want to be a sales leader or a CEO of a company. They're like, okay, so we're not doing open heart surgery here. Son's not going to be a doctor. Yeah, sorry, guys. But I think the best advice for me that I still carry to this day is leadership is not a title. Leadership is not power. Leadership is not about the amount of people that you oversee, right? Leadership is about putting yourself behind and having others put in front of you. Leadership is about supporting your people day in and day out. In fact, you are the first one in, you are the last one out, because you want to make sure your team is set and they have everything that you need, right? Leadership, just like I tell sellers, you want to be better at selling, you have to practice, right? You have to learn, you have to have a growth mindset, you have to be open for feedback. And that today still just sits and resonates with me, right? Leadership is not power. It is a massive responsibility. People are putting trust in your hands that lead them to success, and also creating a culture where you want your people to stay. And so I think that was probably one of the best, more profound tips I've ever gotten from a mentor when I was younger, and still something I live by today.
Yeah.
Um, and I think from a seller standpoint, you don't have to be the hero. Make the customer the hero of the story. I think that changed a lot of things for me when I was younger and selling, from how I pitched, in knowing that making your hopefully your prospect feel like, they have the ball in their hands. However, in reality, I was carrying them along the entire way, right? I didn't try to be a know-it-all. And I should take that back. When I first started in sales, I tried to be a know-it-all, but
Yep.
then I realized that kind of bit me a few times, right? And so I was okay being like, "Hey, Andrew, I don't have the answer to that, but you know what? Let me talk to my team, and I'll get back to you this afternoon to make sure that we're both aligned on that. Is that okay?" Prospects appreciate that so much more than just trying to feed them the answer to the question that they asked. And so I think for me, it's just like, yeah, let the prospect be the hero, right? Or even if you're dealing with the customer, like, let them feel like they're in charge. Take them through a great sales motion. Again, whether it's a net new customer or if it's a customer that's been with you for several years, right? You have to make sure that they're being heard and they're being listened to, and then and that you're not the one trying to run everything or know everything. Like we always say, listening helps in sales, no question.
So, how do you personally stay sharp and continue to grow as a sales leader?
Oh, and Andrew, I wish I could sit here and tell you, hey, I read 20 books a month. I listen to 20 podcasts every day. I don't. I don't. It's obviously there's a lot going on in the world, right? Yes, I do read. I do read a book. I probably get through any good leadership. John Maxwell's by far my favorite author. I've read every single one of his books that come out. Simon Sinek, I'm a big fan of that. Kim Scott. Kim Scott wrote a great book about just transparency and bluntness in reality, right? And so I try to read a book a quarter. And again, I'm just being vulnerable. I'm being honest here. I think that's a good amount of time for me with, again, trying to manage life and then also trying to manage your career, right? But also at the same time, too, I think one thing I've really embraced over the last 8 years of my career that's kind of propelled me even further along as a leader is just I have a growth mindset. I am always willing to take in feedback. I love to take in feedback, whether that's from individuals who work underneath me, whether that's my peers, whether those my bosses, mentors, it doesn't matter. I embrace feedback. That doesn't mean I necessarily need to, take verbatim every single word that they're telling me, but I listen to their perspective. Great leaders listen to people's perspective. You may not agree with their perspective, but you hear them out and you ask yourself, do they have a point here? Right. And you have to be very honest about that. And I think that's just one thing I have done well over the years. And I have trained my mind to say, hey, they're right. That makes sense. All right. And I have no problem saying, you know what, Andrew, you're right. I think we do it your way. I like that strategy a lot better, but I love to study other CROs. It's like athletes watching game film for me, right? I like to listen to them. I like to hear what they say. I block time to think strategically. I don't just react to the urgent. I think earlier on in my career as a leader, I was very reactionary versus, okay, hey, hold on. Let's take a step back here. What scenario are we in right now? Have I seen this before? And what did I do beforehand? And was that the right path? If not, I have an opportunity to fix the right path now. Or is this something new for me I've never experienced in my leadership time, and I need to think about how to handle this appropriately. But I think the third piece is I'm surrounded by smart operators. Iron sharpens iron. I love being around individuals with my like-minded mindset. In fact, opportunities and companies I've worked for, I always looked at the people first to say, like, are these people, do they have the same mindset as me, right? Do they work as hard as me? And so I think those are important things that I take into consideration and I do daily to try to be a stronger leader.
If you could go back and give your younger sales leader self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Just one, Andrew. Shoot, I think it would probably be about 20 pieces of advice.
I hear you.
Early on, I thought leadership was about doing more. In reality, it's about enabling more by building systems, trust, and people. Slow down to speed up. I say that all the time to individuals, right? There's a time to move fast and there's a time to slow down and really think methodically, strategically about how you do things, right? But again, it's about enabling more by building systems, trust in people. And as a leader, to this day, I still recognize people are the number one thing that you need, right? Great people, people that are getting developed, people still drive the engine of every single company. So you can bring in AI all you want. You can bring in all the systems in the world. But at the end of the day, people are the ones that are using those systems, right? They need to trust you and they need to ensure that they're in good hands following the right leader.
Yeah. Well, John, thanks so much for joining us today.
I had a lot of fun, Andrew. I appreciate you having me on. Do it anytime again.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
All right. That's a wrap on today's episode of the Goals.com podcast. A big thank you to John Mathews for joining us and sharing such valuable insight on sales performance, leadership, and the role data plays on driving growth. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone in your network who's focused on leveling up on sales. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Goals.com podcast.
This episode is brought to you by Goals.com, the sales performance platform built to help teams stay focused, motivated, and on track. While most CRMs just track data, Goals.com drives real results. It's simple, affordable, and designed to help your sales team hit targets faster, without the headache of complex setup or costly consultants. Whether you're using a CRM or not, Goals.com works seamlessly to elevate your performance. Book a fun, fast demo today at Goals.com.